Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. PTI and government talks, something that we talk about, something that we've seen as far as the progress is concerned. Of course, we've also had the Prime Minister now say and invite the opposition on a more amenable terms, and the government seems to be taking that extra step towards trying to facilitate the opposition. Of course, we'll be talking about whether the opposition can come to terms with the kind of conditions at this time, and of course whatever they've been asking, whether the government again is in a position to facilitate them in that regard. The will is there, it seems. Is it? We'll be talking about that as far as the government and the opposition is concerned. Can they meet at a point where there can be some kind of a dialogue? And also, as far as bargaining chips are concerned, as far as the opposition is concerned, what does it really have at this time to bargain with? Does it have anything? All of those are important questions at this point as far as the political chessboard is concerned. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Abid Abbasi, who is a political analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Muneeb Qadir, who is a political analyst, also a lawyer. Thank you for joining us, and we'll have other guests during the course of the program. I'm going to start with Abid Sahib here and then go to Muneeb. Abid Sahib, there is, we've been talking about the fact, what does the opposition at this time hold really? It doesn't seem that they have a lot to bargain with. They keep saying that they want to have an agreement. They keep saying that they want to come to some kind of an, terms, have some kind of TORs. But those TORs are also unfortunately not being able. We can't see any of that coming out and taking any shape. Why, in your opinion?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. We know that PTI, right from its emergence as a bigger political party in 2011, they have never been involved in any kind of dialogues with either they were in government or they were in opposition. It was not their style of politics or mantra of politics to take sort of dialogues as a chip to move forward, which is very much essential in a democratic system. Unfortunately, we have seen that in 2018, in where there was a hue and cry that the RTS system was collapsed, and there were so many other tactics, pre-poll rigging, and people were forced to join PTI, or there were so many groups we have seen. But after the elections, when opposition they started demanding the probe into the elections of 2018, there was no positive response from them, or the same judicial commission which is being demanded by PTI today, that was demanded by the opposition of that time, which is those parties are in government now. They demanded the same judicial commission, but there was no response from the government. The government did not accept their demand, and the same the parliamentary committee was offered to the opposition at that time to probe into the election irregularities. They were alleged irregularities. The same thing today government has offered, but coming to your question, the TR, because just 1 month there are 3-4 meetings of opposition and government, and they stressed upon their point. Negotiation doesn't mean that one party demands something, the parties involved in any sort of negotiation, particularly in democracy. If one party is demanding some hard and fast kind of watertight demands, and the other party does not accept those demands, and the negotiation would shun. It is not like that. It never happens anywhere, because you have to give something, to take something, to carry on negotiations, and after having those negotiations, there is a middle ground among those. If the one party convinces to the other party about their demands.
But this middle ground that we're talking about, I'm going to take Muneeb on this also. Muneeb, the middle ground that we keep talking about, the question is, is it just the opposition? Because at this time, we know that the Prime Minister himself is also saying that, there should be, a committee, and that there can be these talks. There seems to be that effort that the government is making to make that overture. But does the opposition really have anything to bargain with? That is an important question, right?
I think that the opposition is only overestimating its negotiating power, if there is any at all. They don't have much of a leverage, and yet they are holding the government to, hostage to the whims, and they somehow expect that they can blackmail the government into submitting to whatever demands they're making, regardless of how reasonable or unreasonable they are. And it's owing to the PTI that the negotiations which the government had, commenced, and which the National Assembly Speaker, Mr. Ayaz Sadiq, had himself made sure could be brought about. It was PTI who chose to back out. And it's the PTI which is so insistent on getting the Judicial Commission and having its so-called political prisoners released. I think what the PMLN has said, what the Prime Minister has said, that actually the probe should be carried out by a House committee, it should be carried out by a parliamentary committee, and then why?
But we know that there is some, lack of confidence that the opposition feels if it's, the parliamentary committee, a probe by a parliamentary committee essentially, which is what the Prime Minister is talking about, right?
Yeah, I think the lack of confidence stems from the fact that the PTI knows essentially they are standing on very weak ground. They are aware of the fact that whatever narrative that they have been trying to peddle and that they've been peddling now for months and years, it's going to be out in the open if they don't get the so-called Judicial Commission of their choice. I mean, they want somebody like, Justice Saqib Nisar, retired, somebody of that, mindset to be determining what had happened on 9th May and what had happened on 26th November 2024. So they want a Judicial Commission, and they want a Judicial Commission of their own choice. But a House committee, parliamentary committee, which would be probing what happened on 9th May 2023 and 26th November. And as the Prime Minister has asked, that this House committee should also be probing into what had happened in 2014 Dharna, led by the PTI. This is, of course, going to be unacceptable to PTI because they would not want choose to be out. It's not very flattering for them, and it does not support the narrative that they've been trying to peddle. So, I mean, it doesn't come across as a surprise that the PTI is not in favor of.
Let's talk about this. Abid Sahab, is there any need at this time? Does the government really need? I mean, I know that the parliamentary process necessitates that there be talks between the government and the opposition. The government should ideally have an opposition that it has a working relationship with. Granted, all of those things are there. But let's leave them aside for one instance. Does the government really need to have an opposition it can talk to at this time?
I think, as you have mentioned in your question, that every democratic system, for its smooth functioning, it requires a constitutional role of the opposition for the betterment of the people of that country. Well, obviously, they have bagged a huge number of votes to come into parliament, to be in the parliament as an opposition party. It is their constitutional role that they should play a role, on criticizing that, sort of the actions of the government, the day-to-day business of the government, and many, sort of initiatives by the government. But as Muneeb has very rightly said, that they are actually after the narratives. They do not have the traditional way of talking or traditional way of opposition for the sake of opposition, for the sake of betterment of the, people of the country, but they just want to buy the support of the people, narratives. They build narratives and they sell those narratives, and they, make an atmosphere that everywhere, their narrative should be discussed and to muster the support of the common people. We have seen that if we talk about 9th May, and the plea which the PTI is taking, that their leader was arrested, that's why they have started a campaign, and that campaign crossed every limits in the history of the country, that even the GHQ of the country was attacked, the monuments of the, the soldiers, the shuhadas, those were, toppled by those charged mobs in the country. Have we seen any sort of, actions on the arrest of any other political towering leader of the country? When Nawaz Sharif was arrested in the country, and later on it was proved through the courts that he was not guilty, he was politically motivated, cases were, initiated against them. Even President Asif Ali Zardari Zardari. He was the ex-president of the country at that time. He was arrested. No political party has taken law and order into their hands, to release their leader. This is actually the arm twisting. They actually want to put pressure on what they call it revolution. they adopted every kind of measures which they called revolution. They started putting pressures on the state institutions, taking the names of the high ups in the armed forces in a very derogatory manners, dirty Harry and blah 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 blah. Actually, it is their style of politics.
But let's talk about this. I'm going to include Wajih Abbasi sab also. Thank you for coming, Wajih Abbasi sab. Overall, we know that the style of politics, as far as PTI, which Abid sab is also talking about, is essentially they get aggressive, then they back off, then they get aggressive again. The question is that when we see statements like, for example, by senior leaders like Rana Sanaullah would say is that the government will get convince them, and they're ready to be convinced. Do you think that's perhaps showing a kind of flexibility at this time, that the government is maybe open to, for example, a judicial probe?
I think it has been all over this case. All political parties, all other political parties, including TPP, PMLN, other political parties, they have been very sort of lenient, very flexible towards PTI. Always, in 2013 when they staged this sitting, 2014, and they resigned from the assemblies. Then the speaker didn't accept their resignations and they were allowed to come back. Then again that happened in 2022 also, and this time also. So every political party is generally trying to be flexible with them and accommodate them, despite their stance of politics, which we see. I think all of us, including PTI, have to step back.
Okay.
Because our country is facing a lot of problems. We have international issues, we have this terrorism also, we have this population explosion, and we have poverty, that sort of problems. And we have to sort them out. We have to...
You're saying that it has to, those things have to take precedence over, a lot of political acrimony, which we see at this time.
PTI has been on this path of confrontation since 2012. They have been constantly on the road. Whether they were in government or they were in the opposition, they have been on the road. And PTI's followers have been, we should be sort of think in their minds also. They have been facing all these problems, the court cases, and constantly on the road and on this movement. They have to, the PTI leadership should also think of them. They are sons of families. They have to cater for their families also. A young man has to do a lot of things.
But it's also, but Wajih Sahab, let me include Muneeb. Muneeb, there's also now, we haven't seen a lot of people. I mean, if we talk about it from an independent perspective, in terms of their voters and their followers, like Wajih Sahab is saying, for people to come out lately, we've seen the protests, we've seen the call for protest. Do you think it's also now a cause of concern for the PTI leadership that their supporter is perhaps now tired of coming out and participating in the dharnas and the protests? We haven't, do you think that there's overall satisfaction in the kind of crowds that they have or have not been able to draw?
I think with the PTI founder, it's becoming a story of out of sight and out of mind. And so there once used to be a lot of grip that, PTI, but particularly because it's the cult of personality style of politics that they do. The PTI founder, the kind of grip that he held on his supporters, it's gradually slipping away. And of course, that doesn't sit well with PTI, and that certainly doesn't sit well with that individual sitting in a Diyala jail. So they are now resorting to all sort of desperate measures. And yes, whatever PTI is now doing, whatever, political ploys and tactics that they're employing, they do reek of desperation. For example, it's shameful that on, PTI and PTI founders' official Twitter X pages, I saw that they were asking overseas Pakistanis not to send remittances to the country, which just shows that they are ready to throw the whole of the country under the bus, the country's economic interests, national interests under the bus for that one person alone. If they feel and if they truly believe that they're being wronged, they could have sorted out their political troubles through political means, through parliamentary means. And one of those ways could be this talk that was going on between the government and negotiations, out of which the PTI voluntarily, backed out. And that just shows that what PTI is more interested in is, as I've been saying even in my previous response, dishing out narratives. And so there are people like Richard Grenell, whom PTI might have tried to lobby, and now even that is slipping away. Richard Grenell, whatever.
On ground is.
Yeah, of course. On the ground, if you see the PTI's protests, to me, frankly speaking, there hasn't been any sort of mass movement. Normally, when we have anti-government.
But he's saying it's out of sight, out of mind, and I think in the absence of the main leader at this time, as far as PTI supporters are concerned, we are looking at perhaps, the leadership on ground is unable to get the kind of response that ideally they would like, right?
Response from the masses.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you are saying. That was my point actually. Because we have seen the PTIs. Of course, PTI has a lot of vote bank. We have to concede that they have support among the masses. That has to be conceded. But the point has been that even on May 9, if you see the crowd on the streets of Lahore, or Islamabad, or Pindi, or Peshawar, or everywhere, you had seen many people in thousands. You don't see them. You don't see people on all these movements and everywhere in the country. What their system has been that they bring crowd from different part of the country to one place. And if you gather like 10,000 people in Islamabad, that's a lot of gathering in Islamabad. But that doesn't mean that you have the support of the masses in every city. But
the question is, do they gather that many people in Islamabad? We saw the last two protests happening, Abid Sahib, we saw, people, and unfortunately there seemed to be, admittedly, the kind of crowds were wanting. I mean, there were people who should have been there, and it was the opinion was that they were not able to get the kind of response that they would have liked. Ji, Abid Sahib.
You're very right, because as I earlier said that they actually fight the war of narratives. They actually try to tell the people that our narrative is this and we have done this, and that's all those bots which were created by them on social media. They actually launched that movement. They were claiming to bring millions of people in Islamabad and to get release their leader from Diyala jail and take him back to KP or his home or wherever. But we have not seen that massive crowd in Islamabad. As Wajih Sahib said, that if the 10,000 people would gather in Islamabad, there would be a huge crowd. That everything would be, seen in Islamabad, jam-packed. But they couldn't bring that much crowd in Islamabad. Even the wife of the PTI chairman, Bushra Bibi, she was also leading that dharna at that march and came to Islamabad. And when they saw that they couldn't bring the required or the desired people in Islamabad, they again turned their narratives that goli kyun chalai, that the people were fired by the security agencies, which couldn't prove, with the exception of few people. That was everybody, media was there, people were there, and this today's world we cannot hide such kind of quote unquote massacre which they were claiming from the eyes of the cameras and eyes of the people, everybody having mobile phones.
And those rumors quickly died down naturally because there was nothing to substantiate them on the ground with.
The substance was not there in those sort of claims. Now again, they know that if a parliamentary commission, as Muneeb very rightly said, that a parliamentary commission starts its work and probe into the issues, the things would come out. Everybody knows what has happened on 9th of May. Everybody knows they are putting, sort of those even allegations on the state institution, because nobody was stopped. If somebody stops them to come into the capital of the country where dozens of foreign high-ranking officials are here in Islamabad to negotiate the economic issues of the country. When they brought people in Islamabad, they were stopped by the security agencies. They started hue and cry that why their crowd was stopped. And when they launched a protest movement in 9th of May, 2023, they are again making a narrative that why we were not stopped by the security agencies. Security agencies, if they stop them, they are at fault. If they don't stop them, they are at fault. This is actually a war of narrative, or they do not actually serious or sincere to have negotiation with the government, because we have seen their past track record. When there was a very crucial issue on Kashmir issue, a high-ranking meeting was called, and the then army chief, then DG ISI, and rest of the high officials were attending that. The opposition leader and the former prime ministers and president and chief ministers, everybody was there. The whole nation was on one floor. The PTI chairman did not want to shake hands with the then opposition leaders by calling them thieves and sort of
that narrative has always been there.
I just want to add just one liner that Wajih Sahab said, that the lenient view was taken on in the issue of PTI. The whole state actually make them ladla, or they did not face the music of the law and order in the country. Every possible support, the same judiciary, Umar Ata Bandial and Saqib Nisar, such kind of people they want in that judicial commission, because they have been supporting them while being in the office. So this is actually their expectations that we should be given, because we have seen a lot of statements of the PTI chief that why these people, these goons and these thieves are brought into power. Why not me? I want to talk to the army chief. I want to talk to the DGISI. I do not want to talk to these thieves and all that. In that atmosphere, when they have lost, they have exhausted every desperate possible actions for them. Finally, they started this, sort of drama of negotiation, and everybody was knowing that the PTI is not sincere, because if they sit on the table for a longer period of time to convince the government and to convince the other people to extract something out of those negotiations, because 100% demands can never be given to any party in negotiation.
Let me include Muneeb in this. Muneeb, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, for example, when we look at any party, for example, if they give out names and the government gives out names, we've seen the statement by Rana Sanaullah. Do you think that there's a possibility that this judicial probe can be something that can be, accommodated, in your opinion, as a lawyer also?
I mean, of course, there's always that possibility. And, going by what Mr. Rana Sanaullah has said, that option hasn't been entirely closed. It was exactly what was under negotiation that, the PTI abruptly called off the talks with the government. And it's because of, as the other co-panelists have also been saying, that, PTI views its political opponents as thieves, and actually doesn't view them as thieves so as much as, PTI tries to portray anyone and everyone who is in politics other than them as thieves, as, the other, as the ones who are not even worthy of talking to. And with that hostile, environment, with that hostile attitude, I believe that any chances of talks between PTI and the government were doomed from the outset, and PTI was very much aware of it. I think for PTI, this was just an exercise in showing to their followers, look, we did try to negotiate to the government. We did, sit on the table twice or thrice with them, and things didn't work out because we had given an arbitrary deadline for Judicial Commission to be formed, for our so-called political prisoners to be released, and because the government did not comply, and I wonder why should the government comply? But PTI's narrative is that because the government did not comply, so we were left with no other option. Whereas the PTI has every single option. It's being given every single option on a platter by the government, and yet they are so intransigent, so recalcitrant, and they are so insistent on having their way that they really cannot see the practical realities of the situation. They cannot see how politics is done. All they are trying to do is to portray themselves as victims. And that is exactly the mindset with which they had entered into these sham negotiations. And by sham negotiations, I mean they are sham from their side. And, they cannot really digest the fact that...
do you think that they are at this time, of course, whether they negotiate, whether it goes through or not, do you think that they are at this time pushed in a corner? Because
of course they are pushed in a corner. They are fading into irrelevance, and especially so that they had tried to lobby, international lawmakers and international media so much, but now even that is getting out of their hands. Just recently, Mr. Gentry Beach was here in Pakistan, a close ally of Donald Trump, and discussing potential, Pakistan-USA trade relations, and that doesn't go down well with the PTI. And a huge blow to PTI and their narrative was the fact that Mr. Gentry just said that it was the founder of PTI who had shown
that PTI is made. He categorically, like you are saying, refuted a lot of stuff, that had come out from the PTI.
Yes, he actually said that, PTI had been showing fake AI generated videos to the likes of Richard Grenell, and that's why Richard Grenell has deleted all the tweets that he had previously made, and that PTI was trying to rely on. So now they are left with nothing to cling on to. So I believe, just to wrap up my response, I believe that if PTI really feels that they are wronged, that they are victimized, then they should find political means to address their political grievances. Otherwise, it's only street politics. It's just them trying to demonstrate street power, and they cannot keep dragging this on forever or for eternity.
Before I go to the other participants, but they say that, of course, the case regarding the seats at this time, that's also a bone of contention. And they say that, those seats, according to the PTI, claiming that those are their seats. When we look at that case and other, they are saying as far as release of judicial prisoners are concerned, all of those things. And that allows them to give out a mask of martyrs, which they're trying to sell to their supporters, right?
No, yeah, but the thing is that all these cases that they're referring to, all these matters, as far as the reserve seats case goes, of course, the courts had intervened in the matter, and it's still sub judice and it's still pending. With regards to the other cases, I mean, they keep on saying that it was not PTI people. But then when footage comes up on social media of how those affiliated with PTI were agitating on 9th May, causing mayhem, then PTI, first of all, it does take ownership of all those people. And by the same token, it says that somehow their own people were not involved. So there is so much contradiction in their narrative. And then if they're referring to the £190 million case or Tosha Khana case, again, they themselves, when they were in government, they used to say that it's the judicial process. It's got nothing to do with us. The judges have given the verdict. Well, so the same rule should apply to them as well, unless they don't believe in the rule of law.
To come to the 190 million case also, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Abid Sahab. Abid Sahab, as far as for them to maintain that image of being above the normal, which is what, like you said, and I think Muneeb also, the other, and the fact that, they are in that sense quite, they are the honest ones compared to the other political process. That image, do you think it's been somewhat the reality has somehow seeped through now in terms of how the situation is at this time. If we look at, for example, the economic situation, the kind of things that were being told, the kind of scenarios that were being painted, the kind of defaults and whatnot, there seems to be a steadying course at this time, no?
You are right. I agree with you that there are actually some sort of categories of the political followers. Some people are who are having their interests. Some people who are, psychologically maneuvered and motivated through that massive campaign and social media. And unfortunately, I would reiterate my point of view that our state has allowed them what this state has never allowed to anybody else, any political party, right from 2011 till today. They have crossed every limits, either on social media or in streets or writing letters to the IMF. Just imagine if any other political leader of any other political party wrote a letter to IMF that don't give this sort of loan to these thieves and blah blah blah. Where that loan goes for the betterment of the people of this country. They have hired think tanks and hired sort of people, lobbyists in United States, the same United States which they were claiming that was behind the ouster of their government. Everybody knows that their government that was made through alleged illegal means and forceful rigging and all that. That government could not sustain because they couldn't deliver anything while being in power for about 4 years. Their allies, the MQM, the same MQM, when that was not their ally, they were calling them thieves and dacoits and killers and blah blah blah. Then that MQM has left because they have their own political sort of support in the areas when they were knowing. The Sheikh Rashid, he is very vocal allies of PTI. He was on record by saying that we were at the deep ditch of our political support and everything after this vote of no confidence against the PTI government. Every sort of allegations would go to the new government, and the same was happened. For my opinion, that every political government, the yardstick to measure the sort of capability or performance of any government is to deliver to the common masses. And we have seen a lot of developments in recent weeks and recent months that we fortunately we got out of those sort of dangers of being defaulted financially, and then we have got loans from IMF, we have got so many support. The UAE government, the very high-ranking officials, they came to Pakistan, they have shown their interest to invest in Pakistan. Similarly, MBS in Saudi Arabia has given a very sort of olive tree, sort of branch to Pakistan in terms of finance. Similarly, the Chinese officials are coming to Pakistan, and yesterday we have seen that was a very drastic kind of positive change in recent year, that Gentry Besh, who is a very close ally, the financially or the business ally of the president, newly elected president of US, Donald Trump, he has, as you mentioned earlier, refuted every allegations which was, and he said very categorically that it was AI generated videos were shown to Richard Grenell, as Muneeb Qadir as earlier said. I mean to say that there are some, sort of good news coming to Pakistan, and if the government succeeds to deliver to the people of Pakistan, with, as you said, that the Dharna issue of the Goli Chalai issue that the state has
I want to come
that
to
has
that.
dried out naturally. Similarly, this this sort of mess created by PTI for the last 14 years in the country, that was dried out.
But is that when we talk about this committee that the Prime Minister is talking about, the House committee, the mechanism for it, don't you think that there can be some TORs and there are people that perhaps the PTI leaders or, chairman at this time would be agreeable to, between, as far as all parties are concerned, there are always people that are thought to be more, perhaps, not so antagonistic, and perhaps, they'll be able to, as far as names are concerned, they would be amenable to having such people in this committee instead of going towards the judicial course.
I think before, if whether it's a judicial commission, whether it's political commission, whether it's parliamentary commission, whether it's a commission of the eminent people, one thing has to be clarified, one thing has to be ensured from PTI, that they will accept the
Outcome of it.
findings of those commission, and if their narrative is not, come forward, it's not accepted or it's not proved, then they will go for apology. Because we have seen a lot of commissions formed on the instance of PTI, on their demands. You will remember there was a 30 picture story also in the 2013 elections.
Yes.
Then 2018 there was also commission. Then there was there are so many commissions, but they never accept the findings because their findings are not in accordance with the PTI narratives. Even if this their so-called their stance on the February elections, if for example they are saying that give us back our mandate, who will decide in this country that which of the candidate has won? Somebody has to if I am a candidate, it's not for me to say that I have won. It's not my opponent.
You have to have some kind of confidence in the institutions of the country.
You have to have confidence in
Which it seems that, of course, we know that the PTI has said they're not.
So that's the
as
issue.
far
That's
as your
the issue.
judiciary is concerned, if you look at, but now they're talking about a judiciary.
Even
Yeah.
appointed by themselves.
Themselves. I
Yeah.
want-
So if there is a judicial commission now on the 9th May also.
You're saying, what if the conclusions are not what they want?
Yes, what
then
they
will
want.
they accept them?
Because the state institutions were attacked. There was violence. The peaceful demonstration, right to peaceful protest doesn't mean that you torch the government buildings, you destroy properties, you kill people. There was the Lahore residence that was destroyed. Everybody, we have seen on with our own eyes that was being destroyed.
Yes,
it
the
was
Core Commander
torched.
House.
The
Court
shower
Commander
buildings
House,
were torched. There was that happened in Mardan, that happened in Mianwali, that happened in Karachi, that happened in Gujranwala, that happened in Lahore. It's everywhere. Somebody has done it. Somebody has done it, and those were the supporters of PTI. They have done it. So what they want to prove? What they want to prove? They in the blue area on 26th of May, they were dispersed. They were dispersed, and you started this narrative that Goli kyun chalai. There was no firing. They were dispersed because they were exhausted, and there was no leadership to guide them. And everybody knew that these people were thinking that we were being brought from those far-flung areas, and we were being left stranded there. So they left. Now they started this narrative. So on 9th May or 26th November, they form commissions. The commission will have to decide all those things.
But you're saying, will they agree or not?
Yeah.
Let me go to Muneeb on this. Muneeb, the question I think is a very relevant one, and we've had this discussion before. What Wajih Saab is saying, he's saying whatever kind of a commission it is, for example, it's a judicial commission, and then the conclusions are not what the PTI would like. Will they still accept them? That is a question, right? Because we've seen that in the past, that has never happened.
PTI is never going to accept anything which does not go in its favor. And this is why I have seen so many other political parties in Pakistan, and we do have a multi-party system. They, from time to time, they have always claimed that they've either been victimized or that they've not gotten things done their way, but none like PTI, which takes and adopts this attitude of my way or the highway, which is that if and only if things go in our favor, only then are we going to say that the justice has been done. But any finding of guilt or wrongdoing on our part Oh, so it means that, some lifafas, i.e. envelopes were at play. Somebody had been bribed. There is corruption going on behind the scenes. The whole system is pitted against us. And because, this is what populism is all about. Populism is all about dishing out narratives and filling people with anger. Whoever is listening to you, your followers, you are only trying to capitalize on the anger which you are feeding into them. And that is exactly what PTI does. And so that is why PTI seems to be, pursuing a judicial commission route, because they then next step would want that judicial commission to be led by somebody who has the same outlook as their very favorite former judges, like, as I've also previously mentioned, Mr. Saqib Nisar or Mr. Umar Ata Bandial. So they want to have their cake and eat it too. But unfortunately for them, that is not how politics works. And I think that the government should take a principled stance. Whatever law and whatever political norms dictate, only those should be stuck to. These pressure tactics.
What kind of a future of this negotiation do you predict?
I don't see any future of this negotiation procedure at all. Simply because PTI does not believe in negotiations. It believes in aggression. And I'm not exaggerating. The verdict is out.
But they've tried that route, right? It hasn't worked.
Cosmetic manner, in a very superficial manner. So yes, on the surface they have tried, but then they are the ones who ensured that those talks did not come to fruition, and nothing of substance ever came out of those talks, because that was the mindset with which PTI had gone into those talks in the very first place, to defeat those talks.
So you're saying that maybe the aim is just to look like the wronged party again, which is what
exactly.
And unfortunately, and Abid Sahab, do you agree? You don't think that the talks will pan out? It's not likely.
I don't think so. I fully agree with Muneeb that PTI, they have not that temperament. This is not in their favor to have negotiation and to solve the issues.
But if they are in a corner, if they do feel pushed, Wajih Sahab, if they know that they have little options, perhaps this is the only option left.
I just want to add a personal condolence. We have lost a very renowned Quranic scholar last week. He was our common friend, Wajih Sahab and me. And he is a very, sort of Quranic scholar of very high posture, very high status. He has, taken last breath last week. And I just want to extend my condolence to our friends and his followers and all those. He was a great Quranic scholar. After Syed Ahmad Saud Sahab, he lost, we have lost him last week.
Ji, may Allah grant him the highest ranks in heaven, and we all pray for him, and sabr to the family. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today. As far as overall the talks are concerned, we all seem to agree that things are certainly at a point where there needs to be more flexibility by the opposition. Of course, we've seen the government say that perhaps convince us, and that certainly is an invitation. Let's see if the opposition can come up with the kind of arguments that can convince the government at this time. Certainly, any kind of agreement between the government and the opposition would be welcome, and certainly a working relationship, again, I keep saying, is ideal in a democracy, even one that is not quite mature like ours. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.